everyone, Phoenix Knight here. Welcome to the channel, and welcome to a new playthrough on the channel. We paid a visit to the Terra Mystica universe last week, so now it's time for my Tac Up Wargaming list to take center stage this month. I'm going to play 5 of my games on the list this month, and tonight we're going to start with one of the smallest games on the list as we play On to Moscow from Worthington Games. In this game, we take control of the Axis forces as we try to advance into the Soviet Union during World War II. Our goal is to get victory points based on the objectives of the scenario. Speaking of which, let's go ahead and go through the mission briefing, and we can go ahead and crack the book open here while I find the scenario. Here's the scenario I'm getting ready to play. Finnish warfare. Looks like the map will show up just fine on the camera, but we can go ahead and go through the intelligence report. Russia annexed portions of Finland at the end of the 1940 Finnish War. Finland became an Axis ally to reclaim this territory. The Axis player campaign goal is to occupy all cities on the Finnish front track except Leningrad to earn a medal. Failing to occupy all cities on the Finnish track, deduct 3 victory points from the final score. So you can see here our goal is everything on the Finnish front except for Leningrad. Let me see if I can zoom in a little bit so you can see that. I don't want to zoom in too much though, but you can see down here, the Finnish front is all up here. So basically we want to occupy everything. We need to occupy everything except Leningrad. Leningrad will give us huge victory points at the end of the game, but I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself on that front. We might also have to deal with some of the other theaters in the war at the time. So we might have to conduct battles in the Arctic Theater, the North Africa Theater, the Middle East, or dealing with Britain and the Air Force behind us. I won't go through all of the... You saw a shot of the events. I'll tip the camera up just a touch so you can see... the events up here. I won't go through every single event. I'll only go through the ones when they come up. But anyway, we'll be using the action markers over here to deal with our actions. Now, I do want to talk special about the various colors on the boxes. So these are the normal boxes where you'd put the turn number in, and then you'd carry out the action based on that, based on the turn structure there. The red outlined boxes, which might be a little hard to see with the laser pointer, but anything that looks like this is a refit box, where you basically have to refit and you can't actually do the action. If you put a turn number in a blue box, however, in that case you're able to take the action and you get a +1 modifier for it. So that is definitely something to keep an eye on as far as how we're able to do that. Then we've got reserves that we can commit to the various fronts. We'll talk more about how that will happen when we actually get into that. So looking at the map, the main goal here is I kind of want to go around the Horn. I do want to take Leningrad if I can. I'd prefer to catch that in a pincer with the Northern Front if I can, but we'll have to see how the game unfolds. Anyway, I think that's everything all set up. Like I said, I'm not going to go through all of the events until they actually pop up. So with that, I think we're all set to play, so let's go ahead and get into this game. The first thing we have to do is determine how many resource points we have for the turn, and we'll do that via a die roll. It might be a little bit hard to see with the dice tower in shot as well. I'll zoom in on that just so you can see. If we roll a 1 to a 2, that gives us 1 resource point for the turn. 3 to 4 gives us 2 resource points. A 5 gives us 3, and a 6 gives us 4. So obviously, the higher we can roll, the better. But anyway, let's see what we have for our first turn to work with. That's a 6, so we have 4 resource points to start the game. So I'll put that down here on the turn track. I may have to turn the map just a touch so I can actually write on it. So we've got a 4 here. Now what do I want to do with those 4 resource points? Well, I think what we're going to do here is we're actually going to try to advance on the finish front right away. Then we'll actually take an advance on the central front, just in case we end up getting a. This is why I like playing in pencil rather than pen, just in case I write the wrong number. But anyway, the reason I'm going to advance on the reason I'm going to try to advance on the central front is because there is an event in there that says and the front may not advance. I really want to advance on the finish front, so I'm going to try to protect the finish front right away. What else do I want to do here? I'm actually going to eat a refit on the northern front because I do want to get that moving sooner rather than later. Then, since I sense they're going to be a problem, I'm actually going to conduct a battle against Great Britain right away. So that's this battle roll up here. Anyway, we have to roll for what the Allied bot is going to be, for what the Soviet bot's going to be doing in the turn. That's where the event chart comes into play. So I'll tip the camera back up so we can see that, and I'll bring the dice tower up over here. I need to zoom in on that. So you have to roll 2 dice for the event. So I'm going to roll the white die to determine which number event we get up here. So we've got 1, 2, 3, and so on. And then this red die is going to determine what the actual event is, or which section of that grouping, of that pair of events we go into. So anyway, we'll go ahead and roll these up. I'll bring the dice tower into shot. So 4 and 5 will bring us into this event, so logistics. Apply a -1 DRM dice roll modifier on any theater battle. The British Navy made the Axis logistics situation in other theaters a challenge. So I'm going to apply the -1 modifier to... We'll tip the camera... We'll apply it to the Middle East theater. So we'll do that there. Now we'll tip back down to the board, and we'll see that I did have to eat a refit on the northern front, so I can't actually advance there. I will get to try to advance on the finish and central fronts, though. So the numbers you see on each city indicate the number I have to beat to be able to advance on that front. So we'll go ahead and do those first. I'll bring the dice tower into shot. So since I'm advancing on the finish and central fronts, I need to beat a 2 on both of those. I'm going to roll both of these at the same time. I'm going to roll blue dice for the finish front and these funky red and black dice for the central front. And remember, I need to roll a 2 or a better to advance on both fronts. And I roll 2 or better on both, so I do get to advance on both fronts. Which means the finish front, I move into Viipuri, and on the central front, I move into Brest. Then I'm going to conduct a battle against Great Britain. So that's a single die roll. On a 1 to 2, no effect, but on a 3 through 6, I get to remove one of the planes in the British theater. So I'll go ahead and roll a single die for that. That's a 4, so I get to remove 1 unit from Great Britain. So we can cross that off. Let's see, that was all 4 of my actions, so I will cross off the turn, and then we can move straight away into turn 2. All right, we'll bring the dice tower in shot. Hopefully we can have another good turn like that. A 3 gives us 2 resource points. So once again, I'll turn the camera toward myself here, or the book toward myself. With 2 resource points, I'm going to try to advance on the Again, this is why I play this game in pencil. I'm going to try to advance on the northern front this turn, and do I want to run another battle against Britain? I think I do, actually. I'd like to try to take them out so they're not a problem sooner rather than later. So with that, we can move back up to the event chart. We'll bring the dice tower back in shot. And we'll give this a roll. A 4 and a 2 this time, so we had 1 British resource to the Great Britain box. So Churchill rallied support for the Soviet Union within Great Britain. The Russians were British allies because British leadership supported their fight against the Axis. So I wonder if I was supposed to circle one of these and I couldn't take them out right away, but anyway. Okay, so that's all that happened there. So I'll tip back down toward the map. Actually, yeah, we'll tip back down toward the map. And then we're going to be trying to advance on the northern front. We're actually going to try to advance on the northern front this turn. So once again, we'll roll multiple dice for this. So we'll roll the purple die for the northern front and the white die for this battle against Britain. So I need a 2 to be able to advance on the northern front, and another 3 to remove a unit from Britain. Okay, another successful turn. So that will let me advance into Riga on the northern front, and then I get to take out another unit from Britain. So I'll take out the one that they just put into play. So anyway, that is it for turn 2. Now let's move into turn 3. Let's see what turn 3 gives us for resource points. That's a 2, so that's only 1 resource point. That's rather unfortunate. So what do I want to do on turn 3? I think we're going to go ahead and let's try to advance on the Finnish front again. So now we can move the camera up toward the events and we'll see what happens there. So I'll reach over here to grab that die, bring the dice tower in shot. All right, so that's a 3 and 5. So attrition. Reduce 1 activation for each front in Russia. The long supply lines and Russian winters made resupply and troop movements challenging efforts during the war. So I have to reduce each front by 1 activation. So I cross that out. I'm going to turn the book here. So I lose that activation and this one. Now, if I lose an activation that way, I won't be able to cross off the refit activations, but I have to be careful so I don't cross off any of the extra activations or any of the bonus activations where I get +1. So on the Finnish front, I need another 2 to advance into Sortavala. So let me grab another blue die for that. That's a 6, so we do get to advance into Sortavala. I wasn't aiming at Leningrad that turn because I didn't have reserves ready and I know I'm going to need them to get into Leningrad, but as it is, I've only got 2 cities left to get into Leningrad on that. But anyway, that is it for turn 3, a very uneventful turn. Let's see what turn 4 does. Big money, big money, big money. A 1. Nuts. Not what I wanted to see at all. Do I want to keep moving on the Finnish front? That's actually tempting. But what I think we're actually going to do is we're going to try to advance on the southern front. I've got, like I said, well, I've got a lot of time here, and I've only got a couple cities left to get the Finnish front finished up. So we'll move up toward the event chart. I'm just going to put the dice tower in position. Okay. That's a 5, a white 5, and a 2. -1 dice roll modifier on attempts by fronts towards cities in Russia. The Axis leaders thought Russians would welcome liberation from Stalin's harsh rule. Instead, they fought well defending their homelands. Good thing we're not... actually, we are trying to advance on the southern front this turn. So, alright, so let's tip back down toward the map. And we're looking to advance into Przemysl. I will apologize in advance if I butcher some of these Russian city names. We need at least a 2 to advance there, and we're modifying by 1. So we'll use orange dice to represent attempts to advance on the southern front. Six minus 1 is 5, so we still will get to advance into Przemysl. So we'll circle that. The turn will pass, and then we'll move into turn 5. Alright, let's see what we get for resource points for turn 5. Another 1 resource point. That's the 3rd turn in a row I've had 1 resource point. Let's see. I think this is a good turn. I think we'll just continue moving on the Finnish front, actually. So, see if I can write that a little more legibly. And we'll bring the dice tower in shot. And hope we don't get any kind of whammy on this roll. I'll adjust that just a touch. Let's see, a 4 and a 1. Great Britain. So once again, we add another British resource to the Great Britain box. So we'll circle that plane. And then we still get to try to advance on the Finnish front. So once again, we need another roll of a 2 to get deeper onto the Finnish front. Not British. I may be turning toward the British next turn, but we'll see how this unfolds. A 1 will not let us advance. That's unfortunate. But I knew my luck was going to run out there sooner or later. But anyway, that's it for turn 5. Now let's get into turn 6. My resource rolls are really not helping me right now. So let's get something a little better than a 1, huh? There we go. 4 resource points. I can work with that. Alright, so let's run back the advance on the Finnish front. We'll see what we can do with the northern front. Let's go for the central front as well. And I think I am going to turn and have a battle with Britain this turn. See if I can keep the British a little bit more at bay. But anyway, let's roll for our event next. All right, 1 and 3. So defend the cities. For fronts that are adjacent to unoccupied Leningrad, Moscow, and Sevastopol, reduce 2 activations. If they are attempting to advance into these cities, apply a -2 DRM. All Axis advance attempts that neared Leningrad and Moscow were decisively defeated. However, Sevastopol required a long siege. Actually, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to zoom out so you can see all the events in one shot. You should be able to read them there, so go ahead and pause the video if you like. But, yeah, so we don't have any fronts that are adjacent to Leningrad, Moscow, or Sevastopol. So let's go ahead and zoom back in. Let's see, what did we decide we were doing this turn? Finnish front, Northern front, Central front, and a battle with Britain. So, we'll get a blue, a red, and a black. I think I was using purple for the Northern front, and I'll use the white die for the advance into Britain, or for the battle with Britain. So, for the Finnish front, we need a 2 to advance to Petrozavodsk. I can either take a 2 or higher than a 2 to get to Tartu, or a 3 or higher to get into Tallinn. On the Central front, I need to be higher than a 3, and Britain, once again, I need at least a 3. So let's go ahead and roll this out. Just as a recollection, there are the dice in there. Okay, so we get results that we wanted. Actually, no, we don't. We don't get to advance on the Central front. We do get to advance on the. No, actually, it's the. Oh no, we advance on all 3 fronts. So the 5 gets us into Petrozavodsk. The 3 on the Northern front lets me advance into Tartu, and I'm working on getting Leningrad and that pincer that I wanted. The 5 on the purple for the Central front lets me advance into Minsk, but the 2 doesn't let me do anything with Britain this turn, so that's rather unfortunate, but at least we had a decent amount of resources we could work with. Now, I do need to have an eye pretty soon on potentially getting a reserve out so I can get into Leningrad next turn, but one thing I do want to mention now that it's kind of becoming relevant, on the Northern front now, because I've advanced into Tartu, I can't double back to try to advance from Riga. I have to keep advancing on this loop. Or potentially advancing into Leningrad, depending on how the Finnish front does. But anyway, that is it for turn 6. Now let's go into turn 7. It is very tempting to try to advance into Ladoga this turn. I'll bring the dice tower out of shot so you can see. It's very tempting to try to advance into Ladoga this turn because if you remember the intelligence objective, on the Finnish front, I don't need to occupy Leningrad to get the extra, to basically keep the 3 victory points. So that's a tempting thought, but we got to see what happens on the resource point roll. Hopefully something good. That's not good. That's a 1 resource point. So what do I want to do with that this turn? Do I want to try another battle with Britain, or do I want to go for broke and try to advance into Ladoga this turn? I think we are going to try to go for broke here and try to advance into Ladoga this turn, because if I can finish the Finnish front, that'll actually give me a free hand on that'll give me a free hand on doing some of the other stuff in the game. But let's see what the event says. One and 1. Defend the cities. So once again, if anything's adjacent to Leningrad, Moscow, and Sevastopol, reduce it by 2 activations. If they're attempting to advance into these cities, apply a -2 dice roll modifier, except we're not. We are, however, as we tip back down, trying to advance into Ladoga. So I'll grab a blue die for the Finnish front, and we need to be higher than a 3 to advance into... We need to be higher than a 3 to advance into Ladoga. That's a 1, so that won't fly for trying to advance into Ladoga. That's unfortunate. It's also the end of turn 7. Let's see what turn 8 does. I would rather not commit reserves to the Finnish front until they get closer to closer to Leningrad. But let's see what this roll gives us. A 3, so that's 2 resource points. Unfortunately, I think I will have to eat a refit on the Finnish front. And then the other units, the other theaters haven't really popped up as a big problem yet. So I think what I'll do here is I'll just work on trying to advance on the... I'll work on trying to advance on the central front, because I do eventually want to head for Moscow as well. But anyway, we'll tip up toward the events, bring the dice tower into shot. Let's see, that's a 5 and a 6. Add 1 British unit to the Arctic Theater, then conduct a theater battle in the Arctic Theater if British units exceed Axis in play, and apply a -1 DRM to the battle. The British Navy dominated the seas due to their aggressive leadership. So we do add a unit to the Arctic Theater, and then we conduct a battle at -1 modifier. So for that, I'll just roll a white die as well. Now, the theater battles are rolled a little bit differently. So if I roll a 2 or less, I remove an Axis unit. A 3 or 4 is no effect, but on a 5 or 6, I get to remove a British unit. So let's see how this theater battle goes. That's a 2, so I do lose a unit, so that'll be a unit I just can't deploy. But anyway, let's see, turn 8. What did I decide I was doing? Oh yes, I was going to try to advance on the... I think I rolled a 2, so I only had... Wait. Oh no, never mind. That's what I did. Okay. I wasn't sure. It's not... Pencil doesn't really show up that well on here, but I did eat a refit on the Finnish front, so I am trying to advance on the central front. If I get higher than a 2, I can get to Nivelle. Higher than a 4 lets me advance into Smolensk. So let me grab a red and black die for that. That's a 1, so I get to do exactly Bubkiss on the central front. But anyway, we'll cross that off, and then we'll jump in for turn 9. Resource point roll for turn 9. Is a 5, so that gives me 3 resources. What did I... Here's my pencil. So 3 resource points. We're going to try again on the Finnish front. We'll try to advance on the northern front. And I think we're going to conduct a battle against Britain this turn. This is turn 9, not turn 8. There's 9, okay. So we'll tip up toward the events. Put the event dice in. One and 5. Attack the leading front. The most advanced Axis front in Russia that is active this turn may not advance. If a tie, your choice of the front to stop. Its activation is lost and also reduce 1 more activation. Delightful. So 1, 2, 3. 1, 1, 2. Of course it's the Finnish front that gets stopped, because why not? The only consolation there is it's moving me closer to the +1 activation, but I want to try to be using that in Leningrad if I can. So anyway, I've got the Northern Front that's trying to advance, and a battle with Britain as well. So let me grab the purple die for that, and the white die for the battle with Britain. So on the Northern Front, I need higher than a 2 to advance. We'll bring the dice tower down. And let's see what we get. I'm also looking for a 3 or higher for the battle with Great Britain. And we get there on both of them. That was a 3, by the way. So on the Northern Front, we get to advance into Luga, and we get to cross off another unit with Britain. And then the turn is over there. So now we're into turn 10, and let's see what that yields. It would be nice to roll another 6 here so I can get 4 resource points, but let's see what happens. Not what I wanted to see, so that's a 1. I think we'll try again on the Finnish front this turn. Hopefully we won't lose the activation again like we did last turn. That was really annoying. But anyway, let's see what happens with the events. Let's see, 5 and a 3. Russians fight. Another -1 DRM on advance attempts by fronts towards cities in Russia. So yeah, this is going to be fun. So I still need higher than a 3 on the Finnish front, but I'm rolling -1, so I have to subtract 1 from the roll. Six minus 1 is 5 still works, so that still gets me into Ladoga. Which means now I'm done on the Finnish front, unless I want to try to take Leningrad, which is actually not a terrible idea, because that'll be worth Mondo victory points at the end of the game. But it does free my hand to work on the other fronts a little bit more. So anyway, with that, that'll do it for turn 10. So let's move into turn 11. Alright, let's get a good resource roll here, please. Another 1 resource point. What is this? Alright, so let's try to advance on... Let's actually try to advance on the southern front this turn. Mainly because I want to try to get victory points there as well. So anyway, we can tip up to the event chart. And let's see what kind of roll we get here. Six and a 6. Oh, delightful. So we add another British unit to the Arctic Theater, then conduct a theater battle at -1 DRM. So we'll roll the white die for that. Bring the dice tower into shot. Tip down just a touch. So I lose another sub that I can't deploy in the Arctic Theater. Delightful. That's going to count against my victory points at the end of the game, but the way things are going, I have a feeling that's not going to matter. So I'm trying to advance on the southern front this turn. So we'll bring the dice tower into shot. I need a 3 or higher to get advanced toward Kiev, or actually I need a 4 or higher to advance toward Kiev, and a 5 or higher to head for Odessa. So let's see what happens here. That's a 4, so that actually lets me advance toward Kiev. So we can advance on the southern front there. A somewhat undesiredly eventful turn 11. Let's move into turn 12, and can we please roll decent resource points for once? I've had more than 2 resource points 3 times this entire game, so let's get a good roll here, please. A 6. There we go. Alright, so that gives me 4 resource points. The Arctic Theater is starting to turn into a problem, so I think I'm going to deploy a unit there. Or plan to deploy a unit there. Then I want to advance on the central front. I'm going to either refit it on the battle with Britain, and... let's see. Then I think I'm actually going to deploy some reserves on the Finnish front, because I am going to have the Finnish front try to get into Leningrad in the next couple of turns. But anyway... okay, so I do... oh, no, it's not a cross-off. It's a circle when you deploy it. So I'm deploying reserves to the Finnish front with the plan of trying to send them into Leningrad in a turn or two. So let's roll for our event. And we can probably tip the camera up just a touch more. There we go. All right, a 6 and a 2. I think this is actually a good result for once. So a 6 and a 2, Stalin. On turns 1 to 15, Russian defenses fail. No Russian action effects on Axis actions. On turns 16 to 20, defenses improve. Apply a -1 DRM on Axis front advances. Stalin executed many of his better generals before the war. He controlled Russian actions early with poor results. As the Axis neared Moscow, Russian generals started directing military moves with better results. So we get away with one there. The Russians don't actually screw with us this turn. So we do have to eat a refit against Britain. I'll deploy into the Arctic Theater, since I would actually be able to... I might have to conduct a theater battle up there just to try to get rid of some of the... just try to get rid of some of those British units up there. Then, turn 12, right, I was deploying reserves into, okay, refit, unit, okay. So we're trying to advance on the central front. We're in the same situation that we were earlier. So we need a 3 or higher to go to Nivelle, or a 4 or higher to head for Smolensk. That is still a 1. That die is not getting rolled until later tonight. But give me a break. I cannot get out of Minsk. Anyway, that's the end of turn 12. Turn 13, and this might be the turn we go for Leningrad, but let's see. We need a decent roll on the resource point front first. A 5 is 3 resource points. That should let me do some damage. So 3 resource points. Yeah, we're going to try to advance on the Finnish front, and I've got reserves ready for that. Of course, the central front's going to eat a refit, so yeah, I think we're going to have to eat that there. The southern front I'm going to try to advance on. I've only got 3 resource points. So anyway, we'll tip back toward the events, bring the dice tower into shot, and we'll roll for our event. 2 and 1. Add another British resource to the Great Britain box. I'm probably going to have to turn and try to deal with Britain in the next couple turns. I've almost got them knocked out. So, at least in the air theater. I still might have to deal with them in the Arctic theater, but anyway, let's see. We're trying to... Okay, so we eat a refit on the central front. So we're trying to advance on the Finnish and southern fronts. So let's tip this back down. Bring the dice tower into shot. So we'll grab a purple or blue and an orange die. We'll look at our map situation. I need to be higher than I need a 6 plus my reserve to get into Leningrad. Then as for the southern front, either a 5 gets me into Odessa or I start moving toward Kharkov. I'd rather try to go towards Sevastopol so I can get more victory points, but let's see what happens here. So basically, big money, big money, big money. And we get exactly Bubkiss. Delightful. So we get nothing out of that turn. Wonderful. Right, so that's the end of turn 13. Turn 14 now, and we couldn't do anything with a... with a 3 resource turn. So, let's see what we can do here. How about another good resource roll, please? Of course not. That's too much to ask for. Unfortunately, I think I do have to put that into... I am going to try to advance on the central front with that, and I'll be +1 on the roll there. Because of the blue activation, or the blue activation box. So, let's roll for our event. One and 3. Alright, so for fronts that are adjacent to unoccupied Leningrad, so we lose 2 activations on the Finnish front. Fantastic! We lose the +1 that I was probably going to need to get into. We lose the +1 activation because I can't mark off refit activations. I was probably going to need that +1 to get into Leningrad. Alright, so fortunately they're not attempting to advance. We are trying to advance on the central front this turn, so we'll tip the dice tower back down. We're at a +1, so a 3 or higher gets me toward Nivelle, and a 5 or higher gets me toward Smolensk. So we'll bring in one of the central front dice. A 3, so that'll give me a 4, which will let me go toward Nivelle. Okay, so that will do it for turn 14. Turn 15 now, and let's see what happens on the resource roll. Let's see what happens here. Another 1 activation. Seriously? Another 1 resource point. This might be as good a turn as any to just eat a... Can I afford to eat a refit on the Finnish front? Can I afford to? No, but... Flip. I don't like this. Let's try to advance on the southern front, I guess. So turn 15. I am going to have to turn, and on a turn where I have more resource points, I might have to deal with the Arctic theater. Let's see, a 6 and a 3. Fortunately, it's turn 15, so no Russian effect on Axis actions. Which means we will try to advance on the front, on the southern front, so I'll get an orange die for that. Once again, I need at least a 3 to get into Kharkov or a 5 to head for Odessa. That's a 6, so now I have a choice to make. Do I want to head for Odessa and try to get victory points for Sevastopol, or do I want to try to head for Kharkov? I think I'm going to go for the victory points for Sevastopol, because I know that'll add more victory points. It'll take me a little bit of the long way around to get to Moscow, but yeah, I don't think we're getting to Moscow in this game anyway, so with that, we're into turn 16, and we're hitting a dangerous point of rolling way too many 1 resource point markers, but let's get into this. Alright, let's see what our resource point roll gives us. There's a 5, so that's 3 resource points at least. Let's see. I think we're going to turn... unfortunately, we would have to eat a refit on the southern front. Is this a turn where I just eat refits? Seems reasonable. Yeah, so... this is probably a little late in the game to be eating refits, but I think we're going to have to. So, 16, 16, and 16. At least for a consolation. The next time I try to advance on the northern or southern front, I will get a +1 on the activation there. But anyway, let's move up and see what we get for an event. 6 and a 6. So we add another British unit to the Arctic theater, then conduct an Arctic battle, then conduct a battle up there. Since we're at a 3-1 in the Arctic theater, and we'll be applying a -1 on the battle. Hey, how about another 6 while we're at it? That would be nice. Because a -1 would still be a 5 and would still eliminate the... and would actually take out a unit from them. Of course not. That's too much to ask. Which means now we will be losing victory points up there no matter what. So that's the end of turn 16. Turn 17 now, and how about we run that decent roll back? Alright, let's get a decent resource point roll here, please. A 5. That's actually pretty good. So that'll give me 3 resource points, which I think will be advancing on the northern front, the southern front, and let's have another battle with Britain. That way, the Arctic theater at this point is a lost cause, so I might as well just... at this point, I'm just going to eat the lost victory points on that front. So let's see what the event gives us. One and a 3. Delightful. So fronts that are adjacent to any of them reduce 2 activations. If they're attempting to advance, apply a -2 DRM. Delightful. Well, yeah, so we can't get into Sevastopol this turn, so let's see. The Finnish front and the southern front both lose 2 activations. And the southern front now can't get into... The Southern Front might still be able to get into Sevastopol because we are on a +1 modifier there. Fortunately, the Northern Front is still not adjacent to Moscow, so we'll get the dice out for advancing. Orange. Oh, I was conducting a battle with Britain as well, so I'll use the white die for that one. Right. We'll tip the dice, we'll tip the camera down. Alright. So I've got my front dice in here along with the white die for the battle with Britain. Okay, so... Alright, looking at the results here. So the Battle of Britain worked out, so we do get to take out another unit from Britain. The Central Front was on a +1, that's a 5, so they advance into Zev. And Sevastopol they weren't getting into in a million years anyway, not with that -1, or that -2 modifier. Anyway, that will do it for turn 17. Turn 18 now, and we're definitely getting down to the nitty-gritty of it. Alright. Wait. Hold on. Before we do that, I actually wasn't trying to advance on the Central Front last turn. I was actually trying to advance on the Finnish front, or on the Northern Front. The roll we had was still enough to get us to advance, though. So I think we had like a 5 or something like that. Yeah. Okay. Alright, so back to the roll. Resource point. 1 again. Are you kidding me? So right now we've got Leningrad caught in the pincer, but we can't do anything with it. What's going to be the most victory points? I think the most victory points is probably going to be Leningrad, and I do have the reserves ready for that. So I can use the reserve, in case you're wondering why I'm stressing the reserves, I can use that to add a +1 to a roll on trying to get in there. Let's see, a 1 and a 3. Again with this? For fronts that are adjacent to occupied and unoccupied Leningrad, Moscow, and Sevastopol, reduce 2 activations, and if they're attempting to advance, apply a -2 DRM. So we lose 2 more activations on the Finnish front, and on the Southern front, because we're adjacent to Sevastopol. And we have a -2 DRM trying to go into Leningrad. I'm not even going to bother rolling that at this point. Fantastic. So, that wasted turn 18. Because with the -2 roll modifier, I'm not even going to be able, even with reserves, I'm not going to be able to get into Leningrad. So, anyway, turn 19, and yeah, this is not going well at all. Right, let's see what happens here. A 3 for 2 resource points. Are you kidding me? I have a refit on the Finnish front. This is not the time. Do I just go try to finish? I've got 2 refits right now. Are you kidding me? Yeah, I think we're just gonna eat refits there, and then try to get victory points next turn. So anyway, going back to the event chart. Five and a 2. -1 DRM on advance attempts by fronts toward cities in Russia. So we're not trying to advance anywhere this turn because we ate we ate 2 refits, mainly because we didn't have a choice in the matter. So that's turn 19, turn 20, and this is it. Last turn of the game, let's see how this goes. Of course. I roll 1 resource point on the last turn of the game. What does your dimwit in Berlin think I'm going to do with that? Well, what's going to be more victory points? Trying to get into Leningrad or Sevastopol? Probably Leningrad. So, yeah, I got to try it from the Finnish front one more time. Anyway, we'll tip up toward the camera. One and 3. Delightful. So the Finnish front, just to play it out by the book, the Finnish front loses 2 activations and would be trying to advance into Leningrad, so we apply a -2 DRM. Once again, I'm not going to bother rolling that out, and that's the end of the game. So let's go ahead and tally up victory points. Okay, so just looking at the chart here, we had 1 victory point for each Russian city occupied by the Axis, but we don't count starting cities. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. All right, we didn't get the victory points for any of the major cities being accomplished or being occupied. We do lose 3 victory points because the British had more units in the Arctic theater. Yes, ouch. Then we lose 1 victory point for each British unit in play so we still had 1 unit in play up in the Great Britain box. And then we didn't lose anything because North Africa and Middle East didn't have any units deployed to them. So that means we ended up with 10 victory points, and because we ended up with 11 victory points or less, the Russians win a decisive victory if the Axis player scores 11 or less victory points. The war will end in 1944, with the Axis surrendering and the Soviet Union dominating Europe, based on the gameplay of this game. Delightful. So anyway, just for funsies, as the marshal in charge of this, let's see what my ultimate fate would have been. I will say odds I would have been in a Soviet prison camp. Evens, I probably would have been dead on the front. Alright, I would have been captured as a prisoner of war in a Soviet prison camp. Probably still to be killed later anyway. But anyway. So as far as an after-action report on this goes, I probably spent way too much time trying to get into Leningrad. But it definitely was... But it didn't help that I was rolling so many garbage rolls for resource points. In fact, looking here, I think I had more than 1 resource point. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I had more than 2 resource points exactly 7 times in that game. There wasn't much I was doing with that, but you can see the map here. I'll zoom in on this because I don't think pencil's showing up very well from that far out. You can see, though, it was a pretty dismal map. I got close to Sevastopol, but I got repulsed there. And getting close to Leningrad, the Germans couldn't get in there either. So at least that part was historically accurate. But anyway, yeah, I like this game. It kind of helps me scratch that tactical itch a little bit, and it's a decent traveling game. But I don't know. Feeling like you're basically indebted to the die roll as far as resource points go, I feel like that needs to be I feel like it needs to be a little bit more forgiving in terms of how you get resource points, just because I was rolling like absolute dog crap throughout that entire game on resource point rolls. But like I said, there isn't much I can do when I'm rolling 1 and 2 resource points every turn. But I suppose that's just the nature of the beast of war. So anyway, that's 1 game down on the Tac Up Wargaming list, and that will do it for this playthrough on to Moscow. So Sunday we're going to play Dune Imperium, and we're going to use the Rise of Ix expansion. As for next week, we're going to step into a new tabletop RPG. A friend of mine I play board games with at my local game store is working on starting a regular session of Starfinder, and I'm debating jumping in for that. The first step in that decision, though, is do I like Starfinder or not? So we're going to find out. As you might remember in a product unboxing a couple weeks ago, I picked up the Starfinder Beginner box, and next week we're going to go through the included solo adventure in that box. Thank you for watching the video. Please give the video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Be sure to turn on notifications so you get my content. Be well, stay safe, take care of yourselves and your loved ones, and I'll be back with more videos in the future. Until then, take care everyone.